Rip that boarding pass. She doesn't belong in first class. Let her crawl back to economy where she fits. That's what the flight attendant sneered, right before this airline made the biggest mistake of its existence and paid the ultimate price. Because the woman they humiliated? She was about to hand them a $2 billion lifeline, but in just 10 minutes, everything would unravel. Before we dive into this true and shocking story, let me ask you something real quick. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe justice matters, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Because stories like this, they need to be heard loud and clear, now. Back to the boarding gate at JFK Airport, New York, June 21st, 6:43 p.m., where the air was heavy with arrogance, and a storm was coming. Adrienne Carter, a 44-year-old black woman and the CEO of Vanguard Capital, walked toward her gate in a tailored Navy suit, the kind that says power without screaming for it. She had one thing in mind, closing a $2 billion investment deal to save Stratus Airlines from collapse. She wasn't just flying to L.A., she was about to become their future. She held a first-class ticket for seat 2A, issued under her name, paid in full, verified, documented. Her assistant, Natalie Harris, was a few steps behind, carrying a slim black briefcase with the contract inside. But as Adrienne approached the jet bridge, Kristen Brooks, the flight attendant posted at the door, raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're in the right line?" she asked, voice laced with sugar but dripping in judgment. Adrienne handed over her boarding pass. Kristen looked at it, then back at Adrienne, and smirked. "This doesn't look right." She tore the pass down the middle. "We're gonna need you to step aside." Before Adrienne could even speak, another attendant, Tyler Mitchell, 32, stocky build, fake smile, stepped forward and said, "First class is full. We'll get you a seat in economy. It's cleaner anyway." Then he accidentally spilled white wine on Adrienne's suit, smiled, and didn't offer a napkin. That wasn't all. A third voice chimed in, Captain Andrew Pierce, who'd come down from the cockpit, glanced at Adrienne's ID and said, "This New York license doesn't look real. You're trying to impersonate a high-status passenger?" It felt like a script, rehearsed and ready. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move, or security will intervene." He added flatly. Adrienne, calm but clearly stunned, replied, "I paid for seat 2A, I have a valid ID, and I'm here on business." Kristen scoffed. "Business? For who?" That's when Richard Bennett, a white man in a designer suit, holding a Louis Vuitton duffel, stepped into view. "We've got an issue with luggage space," Kristen explained to him, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We'll have this lady move so your belongings are secure." Richard didn't hesitate. He looked Adrienne up and down and said, "You don't belong here. Make way for real wealth." Adrienne blinked slowly. Natalie pulled out her phone and hit record. Not just her. Chloe Larson, a white woman seated in 1B, was filming, too. "This is insane," Chloe said. "She has a boarding pass." A few rows behind, Lucas Grant, in seat 3A, began recording on his phone. "This is outrageous. Absolutely racist." The staff didn't flinch, as Adrienne calmly repeated, "This is my seat." Megan Walsh, a uniformed airport security officer from Florida, stepped forward and said, "Move now or you're off the plane." No explanation, no discretion. Kristen yanked open Adrienne's briefcase, looked inside, and muttered, "Suspicious documents?" Tyler grabbed the folder and laughed. "Investment? For what? Airplane snacks?" At this point, Adrienne whispered to Natalie, "Prepare to cancel the deal." Natalie nodded, eyes narrowed. "Already on it." Adrienne pulled out her Vanguard Capital ID, placed it square in front of Andrew. "I'm Adrienne Carter, CEO. I'm here to save this airline." Andrew barely glanced. You'll need to save your lies for someone else. Then Kristen did the unthinkable. She reached over and tore the boarding pass in half, dropped the pieces to the floor, and said, "Economy's your place." The jet bridge had gone completely quiet, except for the passengers recording, whispering, watching history twist into something viral. Chloe posted the video to TikTok. Stratus Airlines humiliates black woman in first class. Lucas added his to Reddit with the caption, "Racism exposed on Stratus flight." Within 5 minutes, the hashtag Stratus collapse had 25,000 views. Comments poured in. "Unacceptable." At Travel Justice, 1,000 likes. "Boycott Stratus." At Flyfair, 800 likes. Someone on Twitter reposted with, "This is what institutional bias looks like." Meanwhile, in the galley, Chloe overheard Kristen whispering to Tyler, "She's no investor, just another fraud playing rich." Tyler laughed, "And she fell for it." Chloe's face turned cold. "She's going to bury you." Lucas stood up in the aisle. "You're going to regret this. We're filming all of it." Adrian turned to Andrew and said with ice in her voice, "You'll regret this, too. I promise you that." Kristen snarled back, "You heard the captain. You're done." The humiliation was public, deliberate, and escalating. But there was more. Kristen had already forged the seating log, removing Adrian's name. "No record for Carter," she announced confidently, as if it erased reality. Adrian, standing her ground, said loud enough for the whole cabin to hear, "You're sinking Stratos in real time." Chloe and Lucas locked eyes across the aisle, both knowing what was coming. The internet had already begun to churn, and somewhere at corporate headquarters, an alert had gone off. Stratos stock was beginning to dip. "You either walk out on your own, or security drags you out. Either way, you're leaving." That was Captain Andrew Pierce's voice echoing through the jet bridge, lips tight, posture stiff, completely unfazed by the eyes and phones trained on him. He wasn't bluffing, and Adrian Carter knew it. But she didn't move. She stood tall, despite the dripping stain on her business suit and the burn of humiliation still fresh from Kristen tearing her boarding pass. What should have been a smooth boarding process for a respected investor had become a public shaming, and it was just getting started. Kristen stood nearby, arms crossed, clearly enjoying herself. "That briefcase looks suspicious," she said suddenly, yanking it from Natalie's hand, flipping it open. "Investment documents?" she scoffed. "Please, looks like you printed these at home." Natalie, trying to remain calm, reached for it, but Kristen pulled it back. "Watch yourself," she warned, as if Natalie was the threat. Tyler, leaning casually against the wall, eyed Adrian's suit and muttered, "Costume shop special. Should have at least ironed it if you wanted to look the part." Richard Bennett, now seated comfortably in 1A, looked over his shoulder with a smirk. "I paid for first class so I wouldn't have to sit near people like this," he said loud enough for others to hear. "Is this what the airlines come to?" His tone oozed entitlement. But it wasn't new. He had influence. He'd used it before, and clearly. The crew listened. Megan, the security officer, stood tall, hand resting just inches from her holstered radio. "Don't test me," she warned Adrian, like she was dealing with a criminal. "If I have to put hands on you, it won't be gentle." Natalie stepped in. "Her ticket is valid. She's supposed to be in 2A. You have no right to do this." Andrew turned toward her, cold and dismissive. "You're becoming a problem. Don't escalate this." Natalie didn't flinch. She pulled her phone up higher and said, "You've already escalated it." From her seat, Chloe raised her voice. "I've got the whole thing. She boarded just like everyone else. I saw it." Lucas, still recording, added, "And they've been mocking her the entire time. This is personal. This is wrong." In the galley, Natalie overheard Kristen whispering to Tyler about Richard. "He's a major donor." Kristen said. "We take care of people like that." Tyler chuckled. "Especially when they tip in Rolexes." It was supposed to be a joke, but it wasn't funny. Not to Natalie. Not to the dozens of strangers now watching this unfold across their phones. Chloe posted another clip to TikTok. "Stratos crew mocks black investor." Lucas followed up on Reddit with, "Stratos' racism escalates. Watch this." View counts climbed to 5,000. The comments were instant and fierce. "Disgusting. Fire them all." At Airline Truth, 2,000 likes. "Stratos is done." At Equal Skies, 1,500 likes. Even travel bloggers started stitching reactions. "Why is this still happening in 2025? Back at the gate." Kristen updated her forged seating log, deleting Adrian's name entirely, just like she'd done months ago in Los Angeles when another black passenger was mistakenly removed. This wasn't an isolated event. The system was repeating itself, and passengers were starting to realize it. Chloe muttered to herself. "This isn't new. They've done this before." Lucas turned to her. "Yeah, and now the world's watching." Meanwhile, Stratos' stock dropped 10% in under 20 minutes. The ticker on trading apps flashed red. Headlines started trickling in. "Investor removed from flight." Viral video shows airline crew in racial profiling incident. Amid the chaos, Adrian took a breath, controlled but burning. "Natalie," she said firmly, "I'm done. Cancel the deal. All of it." Natalie, still recording, nodded. "I'm ready. I'll send everything." She tapped her screen and uploaded the audio clips. Among them, Andrew's dismissive remarks, Kristen's laughter about Bennett, Tyler's mockery, and Megan's threats. Natalie turned to passengers nearby. "If any of you heard what they said, we're compiling it," one woman said. "I heard it all. I'll write a statement." Chloe nodded. "Me too. This is bigger than a seat." Lucas, looking down at his phone, said, "People are reposting like crazy. This airline's not going to recover from this." Adrian's voice cut through the cabin. "You're done. Andrew, every one of you who stood by and let this happen, you've exposed yourselves," Natalie added. "She's legitimate. She's one of the top investors in the country." Kristen rolled her eyes and said loudly, "Let me guess. Self-made billionaire?" Her tone dripped sarcasm. Chloe leaned over the aisle. "You owe her an apology. All of you," Lucas said firmly. "No one should be treated like this. Ever." That's when Natalie dropped another bomb. "They've done this before. Kristen and Tyler ignored profiling complaints just 3 months ago in Seattle. A man nearly missed his daughter's funeral because they claimed his boarding pass was fake." Murmurs erupted in the cabin. One man stood up in row 4. "I saw that on the news. That was Stratos?" Natalie nodded. "Same crew." Chloe turned her camera to her own face, speaking directly to her audience. "If this is your airline, ask yourself what you're supporting. This woman didn't just pay for a seat. She was about to save this company. But this? This is how they treat her?" Lucas posted again. "Stratos must change or collapse." As if on cue, the cockpit intercom clicked. Andrew's voice came through, calm but tone-deaf. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor delay due to a disruptive passenger in the cabin. We appreciate your patience as we work to preserve the first-class experience." It was a calculated jab. He wasn't even pretending anymore. Adrian looked up and said softly but clearly, "He just admitted it." Natalie raised her phone. "Got it. It's recorded." The internet erupted. Chloe posted the clip. "Stratos captain just admitted he cared more about prestige than fairness." Comments poured in. "This is bigger than one flight. Fire them all." At Skywatch, 3,000 likes. "The stock's already crashing. This could finish them." At Market Truth, 2,000 likes. "Passengers started blocking the aisle," Megan shouted. "Clear the walkway." No one moved. Chloe stood up and said, "You're not dragging anyone off this plane. We've got eyes everywhere. Lucas added. Respect her, or deal with the fallout. For the first time, Andrew looked nervous. His hand shook slightly as he reached for the intercom. Adrian didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Your bias is public now, she said, and it's going to cost you everything. The plane was still on the ground. The engines hadn't even fired up yet. But inside that first-class cabin, reputations were already crashing, and justice was boarding fast. This passenger must be removed immediately to preserve the prestige of our first-class experience. The captain's voice rang through the overhead speaker, smug and public, and for a few seconds, silence filled the cabin, not because people agreed, but because they couldn't believe what they'd just heard. He'd said the quiet part out loud. Adrian Carter, still standing, still dignified despite every attempt to break her spirit, turned slowly toward the front. The words weren't just humiliating. They were confirming everything. Andrew Pierce, the man meant to ensure safety, had just told an entire flight that this woman, an executive, an investor, a guest with a paid first-class ticket, wasn't welcome because her presence didn't match the image he wanted to project. Kristen's mouth twitched into a smile. Tyler folded his arms and stood at the galley like a nightclub bouncer. Megan walked forward, hand tightening on her belt. You heard the captain, she barked. Get your bag and go, or we'll make it happen. That's when Kristen reached into the bin above seat 2A, grabbed Adrian's carry-on, and shoved it carelessly into the overhead on the other side of the cabin, breaking the handle and nearly hitting a seated woman in the process. Problem solved, she said dryly. Adrian looked down at her now crumpled briefcase, then at Kristen. This is theft. You're damaging my property. Kristen shrugged. We're doing you a favor. Be grateful we're not filing a report for fraud. Lucas, standing a few rows back with his phone still up, said, We're all witnessing this. You're making it worse every second. Chloe pointed at the broken case. That's on you, Kristen. You just broke her bag and made a mess in front of 50 people. Kristen didn't respond. She didn't have to. Tyler stood in front of the galley entrance, smirking. You're not going anywhere but back to economy. Doors that way. Megan took a step closer, her voice now louder and sharper. Ma'am, comply now or you'll be physically removed. Adrian didn't blink. I am not moving, she said calmly. I paid for this seat. I'm here on official business, and I will not be bullied by anyone in this cabin. Natalie stepped beside her, phone still recording, and said, You're out of line. All of you. We've contacted legal. The recordings are already being uploaded. That was true. The videos had left the phones. Chloe's new TikTok video, titled Stratus Captain Confesses Racism, hit 100,000 views in just minutes. Lucas's post on Twitter, now called simply Twitter, titled Stratus Crew Attacks Black Passenger for Her Seat, crossed the same threshold just moments later. Comments surged. Fire every last one. At Skywatch. 3K likes. Is this 2025 or 1955? At Market Truth. 2K likes. This is a lawsuit in real time. At Civil Rights Flyer. 4K likes. Then the financial world caught wind. The Stratus Airline stock dropped another 20%. Traders began pulling out. Screens in Wall Street offices flashed red as executives scrambled to understand what was happening on Flight 268. Meanwhile, Chloe stood up and shouted, She has every right to be here. Are we just going to let this happen? A few other passengers stood with her, Lucas added. Enough. Stop this. This is racial profiling, and we're not sitting quietly while you do it. One elderly couple leaned into the aisle and nodded. She's done nothing wrong, the woman said. This is shameful. In the middle of this, Tyler muttered under his breath. Should have checked her name on Google before booking first class. Natalie snapped her head around. You think this is funny? Tyler smirked again. Just saying, some people buy power. Others fake it. Adrienne took one step forward, looked Andrew in the eyes and said, "You're finished." "Andrew," he scoffed. "I have the authority here," Natalie added, "and she has the receipts. So let's see who keeps their job by tomorrow." Chloe posted another clip. Live this time. Captain just doubled down, now threatening security. This is the end of Stratus Airlines as we know it. The live stream surged with viewers, the chat flying faster than Chloe could read it. Natalie's voice came over clear in the background. "Daniel's been called." That name landed like a thunderclap. Daniel Evans, CEO of Stratus Airlines. Adrienne nodded. "Good. Send the full recordings to his office. Now." Natalie already had. She tapped the screen and said, "He'll be at the gate in less than 5 minutes." Chloe turned to Lucas. "She just brought in corporate?" Lucas grinned. "Let's see them try to explain this one." All around them. Murmurs picked up. "Is that who she is?" someone whispered. "She's an investor?" Adrienne didn't confirm it yet, not until the timing was right. Megan tried one more time. "Ma'am, I'm warning you," but Lucas stepped between them. "You touch her. You'll be the next viral headline," Chloe added, "and I'll make sure your badge number is in every caption." Megan froze. For the first time. She looked unsure. That's when Andrew did something no one expected. He returned to the intercom and, perhaps believing he was covering himself, delivered a line that sealed his fate. "We've made a decision to prioritize one of our elite clients this evening," he announced. "Sometimes we have to protect the brand image of our premium service." The cabin fell dead silent. That was it. The final nail. Adrienne whispered to Natalie. "Did you get that?" Natalie nodded, whispering back. "Recorded and time-stamped." Chloe nearly dropped her phone. "He just said it. He just said they kicked her out because of brand image," Lucas shouted. "You heard it, folks. That was the captain admitting bias. Clear as day." Chloe immediately posted the clip. "Stratus captain says image fairness. View count hashtag Stratus collapse exploded. Daniel has arrived." The storm had "Enough of this," Captain Andrew snapped, pointing at Adrienne like she was some kind of threat. "Kristen, Tyler, Megan, get her off this plane, now." The order hung in the air like smoke, dense, dangerous, and reckless. Adrienne didn't flinch, but Megan stepped forward fast, no hesitation, grabbed Adrienne's arm with force and said, "You're leaving this plane one way or another." Adrienne yanked her arm back. "Let go of me!" Her voice was steady, unwavering. Kristen was close behind, sneering as she held the broken briefcase like it was evidence in a crime scene. "Fake investment scam. That's all this is? You think people like you can buy your way into first class?" The insult was sharp, meant to cut, but Adrienne didn't blink. She simply turned and locked eyes with Tyler, who stood by the galley entrance, smirking with arms crossed like this was some kind of circus act. "You know exactly what you're doing," she said, "and you're going to regret it." Then came the final blow from Richard Bennett, still lounging in seat 1A like he owned the aircraft. "You don't belong in our world," he said coldly, smugly, with a nod to Kristen. "Some people earn their seat, others steal it." That's when everything shifted. Chloe stood up, firm, both hands shaking but voice loud and clear. "Sit down. Richard, you're the one out of place." She turned to the aisle. "This woman has done nothing wrong. She has every right to be here, and we're not going to let you drag her out like trash." A wave of murmurs surged through the cabin, one by one. People stood. Row 3, then 4, then 5. Passengers who hadn't said a word until now started to form a line between Adrienne and the crew. Lucas stepped out into the aisle and lifted his phone. "Everyone's watching. You lay a hand on her again, and you'll answer to every civil rights lawyer in America by morning." Megan hesitated. Kristen scoffed but didn't move. Tyler looked toward the cockpit, visibly shaken now. "This isn't worth it," someone muttered from row 6. Natalie stood beside Adrienne, protective and resolute. "Daniel's almost here," she said quietly. "He's at the gate." Chloe was already posting her new video. Stratus's biggest investor fights back. Hit 25,000 views within minutes. Lucas followed up with, "Black CEO targeted by Stratos." Comments rolled in like a flood. "Wait, she's the investor? Wow." At Travel Hero, 5K likes. "Stratos is toast." At Flyrite, 4K likes. The stock ticker, now being monitored live by business outlets, reported a 30% crash. Financial news apps sent push alerts. Stratos Airlines in viral scandal as investors withdraw support. And yet, inside that cabin, the crew still tried to hold ground. Andrew looked around, seeing support for Adrienne growing, and his voice cracked slightly. "This is wrong," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Adrienne turned to him. "Admit your racism. Say it now, in front of them, or I will say it for you." Natalie raised her phone higher. "He's been recorded multiple times." "We've got everything," Chloe said. "We're with you." "Don't let them silence this," Lucas added. "They think money equals power, but you've got both." For a beat, there was only silence. Then came a ripple of motion near the front. 2 figures entering the cabin. One was the gate agent. The other was a man in a navy suit with silver cufflinks and a pale gray Stratus Airlines pin. Daniel Evans, the CEO himself. The entire energy shifted. You could feel it. Andrew stood frozen. Kristen blinked fast and suddenly looked down at her shoes. Tyler backed up toward the galley. Megan's hand dropped from her belt. Natalie whispered, "Here we go." Daniel's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "What is going on here?" he asked, no one in particular, but everyone felt called out. Adrienne stepped forward, shoulders square, and said without emotion, "You're about to find out exactly what your crew has been doing while you weren't watching." Natalie handed Daniel her phone. "Recordings, all of them, conversations, orders, racial slurs, forged documents, threats. You'll find timestamps, passenger witnesses, video clips, live streams," Chloe added. "It's all online. Hundreds of thousands have seen it already," Lucas said. "This plane's a courtroom now. And your crew just confessed on record." Daniel scrolled briefly, face unreadable. Then he looked up at Andrew. "Is this true?" Andrew didn't answer. Kristen stepped forward, trying to save herself. "Sir, this woman was acting erratically. We couldn't verify her." Daniel cut her off. "She is Adrienne Carter, CEO of Vanguard Capital, our lead investor. Or at least, she was." Gasps moved through the cabin like a wave. Passengers whispered, "Wait, she's the investor? The one putting in billions?" Natalie leaned close and said, "Not anymore." Adrienne folded her arms. "I came here to finalize a $2 billion investment to save this airline. You just gave me 10 reasons to cancel it." Daniel looked crushed, but composed. Kristen Brooks, Tyler Mitchell, Captain Andrew Pierce, Megan Walsh, you're all relieved of duty immediately. Hand over your credentials and exit the aircraft. The silence was heavy. Kristen tried to speak, but Daniel held up a hand. "I don't want excuses. I want accountability." Chloe filmed every second. Her video, titled "Stratos CEO Fires Racist Crew Live," reached 500,000 views within the hour. Lucas posted, "Black investor shuts down Stratos in real time." Comments exploded. "Justice served. At Sky Justice, 10K likes." "Stratos deserves every bit of this." At Air Equal, 8K likes, Richard muttered, almost inaudibly. Token higher. But even he looked nervous now. The passengers were on Adrienne's side, and the tide had turned. Yet the damage was already irreversible. "I'm Adrienne Carter, CEO of Vanguard Capital, and I was about to invest $2 billion to save your company." Her voice didn't rise. She didn't shout or break into emotion. It was calm, confident, and devastating. The moment she spoke those words, you could feel the oxygen leave the cabin. Daniel Evans, the CEO of Stratus Airlines, stood frozen at the front of the plane. His expression now caught somewhere between shock and shame. Chloe gasped and whispered to Lucas, "Oh my God, she's the Adrienne Carter." Lucas just stared, phone still in hand, capturing the moment for what it was, a complete, total reversal of power. Kristen, Tyler, Andrew, and Megan stood dead still, color draining from their faces. The very woman they had mocked, humiliated, and tried to remove as if she were invisible, now stood in front of them as the one person who could have saved their futures. Daniel turned toward the crew slowly. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked, voice low but sharp. "You just tried to throw out our only investor, the woman who was going to save this company from bankruptcy." Kristen opened her mouth. "We didn't know." But Daniel cut her off cold. "You didn't want to know. That's the difference." Adrienne stepped forward. "Don't fire them because of who I am. Fire them because of what they did." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Kristen Brooks, Tyler Mitchell, Captain Andrew Pierce, and Megan Walsh. Your employment with Stratus Airlines is terminated effective immediately." You could hear the clicks of phones capturing every word. Passengers didn't cheer. Not yet. They were still processing what they were seeing, a reversal so complete it felt cinematic. Adrienne turned to Natalie. "Cancel the deal. Immediately. Notify legal. Notify the board." Natalie was already on it, tapping quickly into her phone, forwarding audio, clips, names. Chloe's new video hit the internet just as it happened. Stratos CEO fires racist crew. Black investor revealed. Within 30 minutes, it had over 500,000 views. Lucas posted his clip to Reddit under the title, "Black CEO pulls 2B investment, Stratos implodes." Comment sections erupted. "This is what justice looks like." At Sky Justice, 10K likes. "Stratos deserves everything it's about to lose." At Air Equal, 8K likes. Meanwhile, across the financial world, Stratus's stock cratered, down 50% by the time Adrienne walked back to seat 2A, not to sit, but to pick up her broken bag. Richard muttered behind her. "Should have known they'd send a token." The room froze again, but this time, Chloe snapped around. "You shut your mouth," she barked. "You don't get to speak anymore," Lucas added. "You're lucky you're not banned from flying for life." Daniel heard it too and turned to Richard, eyes narrowing. "You'll never fly with us again. Consider yourself banned. Permanently." Adrienne gave him one look, cool, precise, and without emotion, and said, "Don't waste your breath." Then she turned to Daniel. "You can fire people, but that won't fix what lives in your walls. This isn't about 4 employees. This is a company-wide disease." Daniel didn't deny it. "You're right. We've failed. I've failed." Kristen, now shaking, looked at a nearby gate agent and whispered, "Can I just walk out the back?" Daniel overheard. "No. You walk through the front. Let everyone see the consequences." Tyler, pale and quiet now, leaned over and tried to whisper something to Natalie. "Can we delete the audio? Just the part where—" Natalie pulled her phone closer. "You don't get to request anything from me. You laughed in my face." Andrew, meanwhile, looked to Daniel. "You can't believe everything you hear." Daniel raised a hand. "I believe the tapes. I believe the passengers. I believe what I saw with my own eyes." Then, a sudden turn. Kristen, perhaps realizing the collapse was already underway, blurted out, "Fine. You want the truth? We've been doing this for months. We were told to prioritize white VIPs. We were told to move minorities to the back if things got tight. Gasps rang out across the cabin. One passenger stood up. "You did what?" another shouted. "You admit that?" Kristen shrugged, like she'd already lost. "They told us to make the right kind of people feel at home. That's how it's been since last year." Chloe turned to her camera. "You're hearing this, right? This is a confession. They've been targeting people for months." Lucas looked visibly angry now. "This is criminal. You've ruined lives." Adrian stood there quietly, taking it all in. "This is what happens," she said finally, "when companies build themselves on image over integrity." Tyler, panicked, stepped toward Natalie and muttered, "We'll say the tapes were doctored. We'll say she faked the credentials." Natalie stared at him, dead cold. "You really think that's going to work? With 10 phones recording and the company's own CEO present?" Andrew mumbled. "This is spiraling." And it was. The plane hadn't left the gate, but inside that cabin, the entire culture of Stratus Airlines had just collapsed. Passengers who had never met Adrienne now stood beside her in full support. Some even handed her business cards, quietly offering future partnerships. "You're not just a CEO," one woman said. "You're a movement." Daniel, voice lower now, asked, "Is there any way we can fix this?" Adrian looked him in the eye. "Not today, but you can start by telling the world the truth. No spin, no PR statement, just honesty," Natalie added. "And you'd better have a lawyer ready. A real one." Kristen tried one last time to save herself. "I have a family. Please." Adrian didn't look at her. "So did the people you humiliated." Chloe captured the final moments in one last post. Investor walks, Stratus burns. View count, 75,000 and rising. Across the country, TV anchors picked up the clip. By the time Daniel escorted the disgraced crew off the plane, the damage was already permanent. "It's done," Adrian said quietly, stepping away from the chaos, her voice low but final. "Natalie, notify the board. The deal is off." There was no yelling, no dramatic gesture, just the sound of a billion-dollar lifeline slipping through the cracks of corporate negligence. Natalie tapped her phone, face set like stone. "Board's been alerted. Legal too. Vanguard is out." It was the moment Stratus Airlines had feared most. Only they didn't know it until it was too late. Within seconds, news of the withdrawal spread across financial terminals like wildfire. Stratus's stock, already teetering from the viral scandal, plunged another 70% in a single afternoon. Trading apps flashed red as brokers dumped shares. The company that had positioned itself as the future of luxury air travel was collapsing in real time. And it all started with one seat in first class. Daniel Evans, the CEO, stood at the gate like a man watching his house burn down. "We're ruined," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Adrienne didn't respond. Her work here was finished. She turned to Richard Bennett, still clutching his Louis Vuitton bag and shrinking in his seat, and said with calm resolve, "You're banned from any airline Vanguard invests in. Enjoy the road." Around her, other passengers, some who hadn't said a word until now, stood and applauded, not because they were celebrating, but because they finally saw what accountability looked like. Chloe smiled through tears. "You're a hero," she said, holding her phone like a badge. Lucas added, "Stratus is done. You just showed us what standing your ground really means." Chloe's next video. Stratus faces bankruptcy after investor walks. Hit 75,000 views in less than an hour. Lucas's video, titled Stratus's Endgame, CEO Pulls the Plug, wasn't far behind. The comments were ferocious. "Good riddance to racist airlines." At Travel Now, 15K likes. "Adrian's a legend." At Fly Free, 12K likes. As Adrian stepped back into the gate area, past the stunned crew and silent security, people moved to shake her hand, not with pity, but with respect. Even reporters had begun to gather near the terminal exit, alerted by the trending hashtags and explosive footage. Daniel, desperate, turned to Adrian one last time. "We didn't know. Please. Can we fix this?" Adrian stopped and met his eyes. "You can start by fixing your hiring, your training, your culture. You don't need my money for that. You need a conscience." She walked away, but the consequences stayed behind. Andrew, Kristen, Tyler, and Megan were being escorted out, their faces pale, their names now synonymous with scandal. Still, not everyone was ready to tell the truth. "Unfair," Andrew muttered to no one in particular, arms folded. "This isn't how things used to be." Kristen, in a last-ditch attempt at damage control, tried bribing a gate agent. "Can we at least make the record say voluntary resignation?" The agent looked horrified. "Ma'am, you were fired, on camera." Tyler slumped against the wall, saying nothing. But then, quietly, to Natalie, he said something else. "This didn't start with us. Regional managers told us to prioritize the right look in first class, said it would appease high-paying clients. We were just doing what we were told." Natalie's eyebrows rose. "You just gave us what we need for a federal investigation." Adrian turned, overhearing. "You were told to target people?" Tyler nodded, ashamed. They never said it out loud, but the message was clear. Adrian looked at Daniel. "You've got more problems than you think. This wasn't 4 bad apples. This was policy." Natalie was already on the phone. "We'll call the board back. This isn't just a scandal. It's a systemic failure." A few feet away, Richard stood to leave, but another passenger blocked his path. "You sit. You don't get to walk out while she's still here." Chloe looked over. "You think money makes you better than people? You're about to find out what real power looks like," Lucas added. "Hope you like driving. Richard." The cabin was cleared shortly after that, but no one really cared about the flight anymore. People were on their phones, watching stocks fall, watching clips go viral, watching the story spread like a cultural wildfire. What began as humiliation turned into revelation, and what was meant to be a quiet business trip became a national reckoning. Adrienne said nothing else. She didn't have to. The world was already speaking for her now. The following morning, June 22nd, the boardroom at Stratus Airlines sat in silence. No flight announcements, no soft music, just a long table of pale-faced executives staring at the wreckage. At the head sat Robert Thompson and Lisa Mitchell, 2 senior board members reviewing the numbers flashing across the conference screen. 80% of the company's stock value wiped out in under 24 hours. Investor capital gone. Bankruptcy filings underway. The final headline ticked past the screen like a death sentence. Stratus Airlines implodes after racism scandal. They didn't speak much during the meeting. They didn't need to. The videos had done the talking for them. Adrian Carter's calm authority, the crew's mocking tones, the captain's disgraceful intercom admission, and the storm of digital outrage that followed. Back in Los Angeles, the flight had landed without a captain, without crew, and without a future. And as Adrian stepped off that plane, the applause from the terminal echoed far beyond the airport walls. Reporters tried shouting questions. Passengers took selfies with her like she was a civil rights icon, and Chloe Larson's final video. Stratus bankrupt after racism scandal. Surged past 1 million views by noon, Lucas's matching post. Black CEO's victory crushes Stratos. Followed closely behind. Comments were thunderous, inspiring. At Sky Hero, 20K likes. Adrienne's unstoppable. At Travel Inspire, 18K likes. By the time Kristen's desperate post on Twitter attempted to paint herself as the victim, we were overwhelmed. I was just doing my job. The damage was done. It was deleted after 2,000 views, most of which were replies calling her out for the lie. But Adrienne wasn't watching any of that. She was in a quiet hotel lounge in downtown Los Angeles, sipping tea with Natalie and answering emails from new investors, civil rights leaders, and airline executives from around the country. Some wanted to apologize. Others wanted to offer her a seat at the table, the head of the table. And some just wanted to say thank you. She looked at Natalie and said, "Funny how fast people want to change once the cameras turn on." Natalie smiled softly. "They're not afraid of the scandal. They're afraid of the truth behind it." Adrienne nodded. "And they should be." Meanwhile, inside Stratus headquarters, the company scrambled to liquidate assets. Lisa Mitchell had been assigned to oversee the shutdown. Planes were grounded, routes were canceled, employees were redirected to hotlines explaining severance, baggage sat unclaimed in terminals. The airline's name, once printed proudly across airport billboards, was being removed piece by piece, and it all came back to a 10-minute window of injustice in first class. The fallout didn't stop there. Richard Bennett's name was leaked by outraged passengers. His law firm dropped him within hours. Rumors swirled that he'd fled to Europe to avoid lawsuits. But Adrienne didn't spend time thinking about him. He was a symptom, not the disease. "We can't change the past," she said during a podcast interview a few days later. "But we can make damn sure it doesn't get repeated." A week later, an internal email surfaced from a former Stratus employee, a junior flight scheduler, who confessed that corporate quietly pushed an unspoken policy to prioritize high wealth, white-appearing customers in first class. Going back nearly 3 years, that email was shared with legal investigators, lawsuits mounted. Media called it the quiet reckoning in the sky. But Adrienne stayed grounded. "I'm not out to destroy companies," she said. "I'm here to demand accountability. That's the difference." Before the month ended, every member of the fired crew was formally banned from working in commercial aviation. Their names appeared in a federal report tied to civil rights violations in passenger treatment. Chloe and Lucas were invited to speak at a National Transportation Ethics Summit. Chloe told the crowd. "I just hit record. She did the rest," Lucas added. "We witnessed justice, not because she shouted, but because she stood firm." Adrienne's words in her final public statement echoed across boardrooms and break rooms alike. Justice doesn't need revenge, it just needs resolve. She offered private compensation to every passenger on that flight and made sure the airline's remaining customer refunds were processed before liquidation. And then, quietly, with no press release or social media post, she moved on. 3 months later, Adrienne led a new round of aviation investments, this time in startups led by women and minorities who had been shut out of the industry for years. One of the companies? A regional airline with zero tolerance for bias, transparent hiring, and customer protection policies signed into law. Natalie looked over the new proposals one morning and said, "Feels different this time?" Adrienne smiled. "It is, because this time, we're not fixing someone else's house. We're building our own." And with that, the woman they tried to silence at 6:43 p.m. on a June evening boarded her next flight, not as a passenger, but as a pioneer.